first time was so nice, we decided to do it twice. Yes, can you believe it? OneSoccer today. We are live and in person once again, all three of us. Little weird, though. Andy Petrello, Gareth Wheeler, Oliver Platt with you. Yeah, Adam Jenkins is also live in studio. He'll be joining us a little later on as well. That is always great.
Oh, yeah, great.
But now we got to work on our angles again, because normally we're in our little tiny boxes, and I think this is my little tiny box here as we welcome you on into the show. And hello to everybody also watching in our free view on the OneSoccer YouTube channel. Yes, this is the Tuesday edition of OneSoccer today because tomorrow is a big match. It's the final match in this FIFA CONCACAF Olympic World Cup qualifier for the Canadians taking on El Salvador. So we are talking a lot about CONCACAF World Cup qualifying. We're talking a lot about the Canadians, and we want to make sure you get in on this conversation. But we are going to start with some other games that happen. We're going to exit CONCACAF for just a little bit here, gentlemen, and we're going to talk about the mess, the shambles, the controversy that was Brazil-Argentina. To recap for you, 4 Argentinian players who play in the UK were also in attendance in that Brazil game. But according to Brazil COVID laws, anyone coming from the UK, well, first of all, they're not allowed to come. That's the whole thing. You actually are not allowed entrance into Brazil. That's the latest COVID protocol. They say that these 4 players lied on a pre-flight declaration, and they ended up walking onto the pitch. Brazil authorities did 5 minutes into this one, and Argentinians walked off the field. Game was suspended. Overreaction, appropriate reaction, all that. Health authorities had every right to storm the pitch Sunday night.
That's an overreaction, I think, but I think there's probably a lot of blame to go around here. Like, on Argentina's part, should you not know the rules a bit better in the first place? Like, there's reports out there that they had agreed that those 4 players would isolate and not play, and then 3 of them are in the starting lineup, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But then, you know, what it comes down to at the end of it is that it feels pretty avoidable that this could have been resolved, you know, in the hour at the stadium before kickoff or any time before kickoff, rather than these health authorities walking onto the field 5 minutes into the game and intervening. Like, something's going on there, right? There's got to be something, whether it's politically motivated or whatever, where they decided to wait until this particular moment when the game had started to march onto the field and create the scene they created.
It's an appropriate reaction. By the way, I feel like I need a whiskey. And if I had like a pipe and a smoking jacket, this episode would be even better.
Yeah, right up your alley.
But it's a proper reaction because this was completely mismanaged by both FAs and CONMEBOL as well. They all blew it here. This is the thing. They met the night before for 4 hours, and they still ended up with players who shouldn't have been on the field. And if we're going to take these rules and regulations, which apply to all regions across the world in terms of World Cup qualifiers, then something needs to be done. It's just an embarrassment that it got to that point where that had to happen, halt proceedings, and really provide a black eye. You're right, there's gamesmanship here. This is Brazil, Argentina. We should have seen this coming. It should have been dealt by the official authorities within the game of football, so you didn't need government agencies coming in. Like, look, the rule's stupid. Like, if you're Brazilian and you're coming from England, then you don't have to quarantine for 10 days. But if you're from Argentina, then you do. So the rules were bent to kind of create this level of dysfunction, but it should have never got to that point. And when it does, the authorities are well within their right to go and try to stop something in a very public and very embarrassing way.
Yeah, I mean, you wonder a little bit of gamesmanship there as well. Obviously, Argentina saying that they thought the rules were in place as they were back in June for Copa America. And clearly they weren't. And the Brazilian authorities were upset by that. Arsene Wenger, we know him as the longtime manager of Arsenal, but now he is FIFA's Chief of Global Football Development. Now, he's been on this for a while, gentlemen. He's been talking about having a World Cup every 2 years. Now, this isn't just talk. This is actually now going into the research part of things here. In fact, 166 of FIFA's 210 nations are backing research to even see if this is feasible, to see how it would work. So let's start the debate here in our overreaction, appropriate reaction segment. I'll start with you, Gareth. So Wenger's 2-year World Cup cycle, should it strongly be considered? Is that an overreaction or appropriate reaction?
It's an appropriate reaction because show me the money. We've already gone down the road of a 48-team World Cup. I don't agree with it, but at least it should be investigated. Look, as soon as you jump the shark and went, instead of expanding to just 40, which I thought it should, and go straight to 48, you're going to open the door for the financial powers that be in the world game to make decisions that are in their best stead. Who brought forward this idea in the first place? The Saudi Arabian Football Association. 166 of 210 member nations want to go forward with this study. And look, what is the plague on international football? Too many meaningless games. Too many games. If there's never a friendly to be played ever again, will any of us miss that? Not one bit.
No.
England, Andorra. Go through the meaningless qualifiers. Canada, Cayman Islands. Go down the list. I'm sick of these games. We want games that matter. Now, I think it should be considered. I think the sweet spot would be 3 years. A World Cup every 3 years. The year after, you would play your Continental, your Euro, your Gold Cup, your Copa America. Then you'd have a year up to catch up on qualifying in other international games that are appropriate. So I think that the idea, there is some merit in it, but they shouldn't go all the way down to 2. I think 3 years, a World Cup would be a decent compromise here.
I think we need to look at the calendar for sure, but I think this is an overreaction. It's a preposterous idea. Like it's a terrible.
Preposterous?
Yeah, I would go that far.
Spell preposterous.
Maybe another time. But like this is the issue, right? Is that for me, I think it's obvious the whole value of the World Cup and the reason it's as prized as it is because of its scarcity. Like even if you're a top player for a top national team, you maybe only get 2 or 3 bites of the apple here, and that's if you're lucky. But the difficulty is, how do you quantify that in economic terms? You know, that value, that scarcity. It's much easier to say, well, if we play it every 2 years, think of all the billions that we can make, and you can put a number on that, right? You can put a hard number on that people will sign up to, and obviously a lot of FAs around the world will get behind, and having more opportunities to qualify for a World Cup as well. I just think you would ruin the competition in terms of the real prestige and the value and what the World Cup means if you're playing it on that frequent a basis. I think the same here about the Gold Cup, by the way. Should be every 4 years. We play it too often.
I also wonder, though, if we'd see any disappointments, because, I mean, I think we're also assuming that the best players will always be available to their team. But now you're working them to death here between their professional leagues and then having the qualifiers and then these competitions happening so fast and furious.
It's exactly what we get here, right? USA show up for the Gold Cup with a B team.
Yeah.
Right?
Would you like to see the Olympics be held every 2 or 3 years?
But in some ways they kind of are, because every 2 years there's the Summer Olympics, then, you know, because there's summer,
those athletes
winter.
that play those sports get one shot every 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, in an athlete's career, it goes by. So to be in your, in your peak state, you know, if you play in 2 Olympic games, and you're one of the fortunate ones.
Yeah, I get that. I get where you're going with that, but I think the professional part of it, right, too, is a little bit different with a lot of these other soccer players who then have their own in tournaments within tournaments in professional. So that's where the thing is, right? Would you also see some powerhouse nations maybe not qualify because you just assume that big players will be playing? And they can't.
Still better than the Super League. So.
Well, there you go. As we come full circle on that one. Vancouver Whitecaps. Okay, so we know the Canadian Championship didn't go their way. They were the butt end of a lot of jokes when it came to the Pacific FC defeating them in the Canadian Championship. But here's the thing, Vancouver looking good in Major League Soccer. See, there's that pro talk once again. So they're now unbeaten in 10 matches, and they are 1 point back of the final playoff spot in the West. So Ollie, I come to you. Appropriate reaction, overreaction that the Vancouver Whitecaps are destined to make the playoffs?
I think it's an overreaction. They've got a chance for sure. They're coming into form right at the right time of year, but I think when you look at the teams they're beating, it still tends to be teams that they should beat. You'd expect them to beat. You look at the schedule through the end of the season: Seattle twice, Portland twice, Kansas City, Colorado, Minnesota. Like they got some tough fixtures. So I don't quite think they're there yet. They could sneak into that last playoff spot because it's not really being that strongly contested. Real Salt Lake are in it right now, and I don't think they're a top team either. But they've still got LAFC in the mix, not in a playoff spot right now as well. They've got a chance, but are they destined? No.
Appropriate reaction. East Coast bias right here.
To be right.
East Coast bias. I've always been a believer in the Whitecaps and what they're doing. We could flash back to this program when I said the Whitecaps would be a playoff team. I like the methodical build. Axel Schuster hasn't rushed the process. And guess what? Now they're finally playing back at home at BC Place, Andy. 3 wins from 3 at home. This is the team that was up against it, playing in Utah for the duration of this season. I can see them going on a little bit of a run. They are a stubborn and difficult team to play against. In the business end of the season, a team with that kind of resolve, I like it. I agree with you. A bunch of those bubble teams not very good in the Western Conference, so they have a real shot here.
Yeah, coaching change for them, and then bouncing back, I think, after that Canadian Championship performance, that's for sure. All right, let's turn our attention now to CONCACAF World Cup qualifying. Let's talk a little bit about the United States, right? So they're sitting 5th right now after 2 games. And overreaction or appropriate reaction, Garrett, that the States are actually in trouble after their 1-1 draw against Canada.
Overreaction, and predictably so. They haven't lost a game yet in qualifying, and it's like someone's house got set on fire. I don't quite understand this. Look, have they played their best football yet? No. Greg Berhalter's had to deal with a whole lot of issues. Serginho Dest now hurt. Reyna's come into camp. He left. He's hurt. DK, Morris, Areola, a number of players weren't fit coming in. Pulisic coming off COVID. Zach Steffen has COVID. So he's put together a little bit of a mishmash of a team. But look, this is still a group that was dominant during the summer months, and just give them time. Let's see what happens Wednesday night against Honduras. They desperately need a win just to tone everything down a notch, just to bring down the volume. But I think they're A-okay as of right now.
It's an overreaction, but like you got to be a little bit concerned, haven't you? Even though it's this early. Like they've scored 1 goal in 2 games. They've not exactly been creating chances on a free. Yeah, but who cares about the standings right now? They're not exactly creating chances on a free-flowing basis. Like Canada gifts them a goal.
That's fair.
The other part of it for me, Weston McKennie, like this situation, I know you can just say, well, it's one player not behaving himself, not doing the right thing before a game, and obviously it is, but for him to actually behave like that, like to let his team down like that, what does that say about, you know, the buy-in they've got? I don't think that happens with Canada under John Herdman.
Yeah.
That to me is not a great sign of what that kind of room is like. So I'm a little concerned. I think they'll be okay. It is an overreaction, to be clear, but there's a little couple
I love it, by the way. I love what's happening right
to
now.
be a little anxious, I think, if you're a US fan.
Yeah, and you know in sports, you never isolate one tournament, to your point, and say, well, they haven't lost yet, because you know everyone's thinking of 2018. You know everyone's thinking they didn't qualify for the World Cup. So it doesn't matter what they did Gold Cup. It doesn't matter what they did in the Nations League final. Everyone always kind of look at the World Cup as a whole, right? So that's why, which is why, because already in the United States, you know this conversation is happening, and that is with Greg Berhalter. So I'll start with you, Ollie, on this one. Is it an overreaction or appropriate reaction to say that tomorrow versus Honduras, he is coaching for his job?
It's an overreaction. I understand that there's going to be a lot of people very unhappy in the States if he doesn't get a result tomorrow, but where are you going to go? Like, if you fire the coach at this point, who do you go to? Jesse Marsch isn't dropping everything in Leipzig to come and coach the US men's national team right now. So, you know, they'd have to find a foreign coach, someone with no real familiarity with the program, or they'd be hiring a domestic coach who's just not got the same pedigree as Greg Berhalter. So what's the point? I don't see it happening at this point.
Didn't they do that last time around with Bruce Arena to the rescue? Exactly. And that's why I think it's an overreaction too. I will say this, Berhalter, despite having a brilliant summer, has gone against his methodology to a certain degree. I wasn't sure if you felt the same way when the squad was announced. He named a bunch of these players that play overseas, brought them back in. It was a strong group of domestic talent who I think is a little bit underrated that got them through some very difficult games in the summer. Only 4 players started against Canada who started in the Nations League final. Only 4 players who started in the Gold Cup final against Mexico started in that Canada game as well. So I think he needs to get back to what has been successful for him. And I'm not sure that he's turned to the players that have kind of built that bond and stayed connected. That's what John Herdman did, right? He kept an Artfield out of the team to keep that team together, connected. There's just no sense of fluidity in the team. So, but I've always thought this, Andy. I always thought the U.S. hired the wrong Greg. I always thought it should be Greg with 2 G's, not 3. And Greg Vanny would have been the best suited man to coach the U.S. men's national team.
Well, they're in it now. They're in it now with this coach. And Canada, I'm sure, is very happy to be in it with their coach and John Herdman, right? So we also know, big deal whenever you can beat the United States or at least get a point from them, right? We were there at BMO Field, Nations League, first victory in 34 years over the United States. And then they couldn't beat them, right? And then they came oh so close in the Gold Cup. And then they get this draw against them in World Cup qualifying in Nashville. So here's the question, overreaction or appropriate reaction, Ollie, that the result 1-1 against the United States is its most important result since going back to 1985 when Canada beat, Honduras 2-1. They qualified. They qualified for the World Cup. Is this World Cup qualifying game a bigger game?
No, overreaction. It's a very, very big game and a big result, obviously, and it does a lot of good for Canada in terms of the belief that they're going to feel when they go away from home that they can get points anywhere, right? They can take a point off anyone. They've got this brilliant counter-attacking threat in Davies, Buchanan, all of these guys who can play in transition at speed. So it's a great result, but Canada won a Gold Cup 20 years ago, 21 years ago. Like, surely that has to be a bigger result, winning a major tournament, than a point in a World Cup qualifier, as big of a match as that was.
Okay, I'm going to go with appropriate reaction here.
Wow.
And I hope that Adam Jenkins is looking, because he loves when Ollie does this. I'm gonna augment it. I'm gonna twist it. It's hopefully an appropriate reaction, because if Canada goes on and qualifies for the World Cup, and that one point, that one precious point on an away trip to the best team in CONCACAF, it could be the biggest result. It could come back. We might be sitting here in March and say, you know what, getting that point against the United States, that could have really provided that clear turning point. So I'm going to go for the hopefully appropriate.
We'll come around to the hopefullys eventually.
Yeah, we're jumping on board with the hopefully. Then we'll revisit that in a few months' time.
I took his move.
Yeah, in the new year. More World Cup qualifying talk when we return. We stay in CONCACAF and discuss who's already in trouble. Is Mexico still the best? And does the top three still feel like anyone's guess? It's coming up on OneSoccer today.
Loose ball, Novak!
Yeah, I think after the game, I was on Instagram Live, just, having fun, celebrating, enjoying my night. And then, I don't know, something just clicked in my head and said, just, tell Drake to follow you on your live. So I said it, I was like, hey, Drake, you should follow me on Instagram. Then I'm just, having fun, ended the live. I think 2 minutes later, I went on Twitter and someone tweeted Alphonso Davies update, and I saw Drake follow me. So I went on my Instagram to see if it's actually real, and he did. And when I posted the video, he sent me a message after. He was like, "Congrats, King." I was like, I think I lost it. I was so excited. I was so excited.
2 games into the final round of CONCACAF World Cup qualifying. Here's how things stand. Canada in that 3rd slot. Now, fair to say we have seen some surprising results, right? Like even Canada drawing with Honduras, Panama up in 2nd, United States drawing 0-0 El Salvador. But here's the thing. Mexico, they're the only ones with 2 wins, right? They have not faltered here, pulling off the full max points that they can get. So, Garrett, I'll start with you. Are they clearly still the best team in CONCACAF?
I don't think they're the best team in CONCACAF. I think the United States are the best team. So still, that word is a little bit tricky there. Look, it's been a positive start. They beat Jamaica. It was a little bit of a struggle in their first match. Then they went to Costa Rica and beat a team, for me, is bang average. They're old and slow. I don't think that Mexico has hit their level yet. I think that they're still working their way into this competition. It bodes well that they got 6 points. That's fine, and they will be the team to kind of chase down now. But I still think that the United States, by virtue of the fact they beat them twice in big games this summer, and is nearly a full-strength Mexican side both times, that I still think the United States are the better team.
But that's just it, is that Mexico hasn't hit full stride yet. They're just working their way up very slowly, very casually, and they still got 6 points out of 6. And they played Jamaica and Costa Rica, two pretty good teams that you'd expect to be in contention. Maybe Costa Rica aren't what they used to be, but it's still a difficult away game. So I look at this Mexico team just kind of getting into second or third gear, I'd say, at this point. No Lozano yet, no Jimenez. You know, they're still experimenting with different players, rotating the team quite a bit.
But they're not emphatic like they have been. Like, 89th minute winner, penalty winner against Costa Rica. I mean, like, this isn't a team. Typically, it's like you play Mexico, it's like, oh, if we can keep within 2-3 goals, we've kind of done our job and come away with a good performance. Yeah. This is a team that's they're not showing the same sharpness. I don't think they did the same ability. I don't think they certainly have a depth of players, but the high top level players are simply not there for this Mexican national team.
But is that because they can't get there, or because they're just quite happy and content to work their way up to that and take points because they're winning games anyway? You know?
Is the gap closing? I feel like that can be a question. Next time, park it. We're not going to answer that just yet. Jamaica, 2 losses. United States, 2 draws. Ollie, who's in bigger trouble?
Jamaica, because it looks exactly like your worst fears, right? Which is that there's a load of talented players there. Mikel Antonio made his debut. Kamar Roof's come in. Ethan Pinnock, you know, all of these Premier League players are playing for them. But there's no chemistry. There's no familiarity with CONCACAF qualifying. There's no ability to control a game at home. Like, you simply can't put a team of 11 individuals together and expect them to hit it off straight away. And that didn't happen. They've dropped a home game to what most people would call one of the weakest teams, or the weakest team in this qualification stage. Panama's showing that might not be the case, but it's still a shocking result for Jamaica, and they have not started well at all.
I did some simple math here. 42 points at stake. By the way, my cue cards.
Yeah, those are your cue cards. There's absolutely
nothing. 42 points at stake here. I was just branding the OneSoccer. And they've already dropped 6. And if you look at, I'm not sure which number you settled on in terms of how many points you need to qualify for the World Cup. I think it's going to be in and around 24 points. So that means they can afford to lose 12 more points with 12 more games to go for Jamaica.
Not a lot.
It's not a lot, but they're not out of it yet. That's what I'm trying to paint the picture here. Same thing with the United States. I mean, the way that the table has gone with 6 of the 8 teams on 2 points or less, I mean, that opens the door for everyone battling for that third and final playoff spot. And I think that, with all due respect to Panama, I just always think of Van Halen every time.
Oh my goodness, we're going to hear that every time, aren't
we? I don't think anyone thinks that they're going to finish in the top 3, and they're on 4 points. So for me, this is wide open. It's anyone's game who's going to finish in the top 3.
Well, leading perfectly into the next question, because that's the thing. After that Honduras draw Canada to start off the final round of World Cup qualifying, we thought it was pretty devastating, right? And then when the night ended, it was really just Mexico who picked up the full 3 points. Everyone else ended in a draw. So is this the most wide open you've ever seen CONCACAF World Cup qualifying?
No, because we've seen qualifying campaigns like the United States not qualifying last time around in recent years. We've seen Trinidad and Tobago and Honduras and Panama all go on and qualify. So, look, I like the 8-team dynamic, and there's going to be many more teams involved by virtue of having 8 teams rather than 6, especially generally through these qualifying campaigns. There's been that one team that's been a little bit further off. I'm not sure that we're going to see that this time around. So perhaps, yes, let's just see how these next few games play out. But I think it's a misnomer to think that, you know, there haven't been some wild qualifying campaigns in recent years.
Oh yeah, just like the last one, right? Like Costa Rica beat USA twice, beat Trinidad twice. They didn't win another game, and they qualified for a World Cup. Yeah. Like, that was wide open. I think you're gonna need to be better this time than you were in 2018 to finish in one of those top 3 spots.
All right, well, let's wrap this up with, you know, the conversation of the 8 teams, who needs a win the most, right? Because tomorrow it's the final game in this FIFA window. All the games, by the way, you can watch on OneSoccer. Who needs a win the most?
I'd have to say the USA at this point. Maybe not in terms of who really needs one in terms of the points on the boards, but just like things are going to go into overdrive in terms of the media meltdown that will happen if they don't get a result in Honduras. You know, I think even if they get a draw, there's going to be a lot of questions asked about that group. You start to get those seeds of doubt sown within the group. It's a lot of young players. You don't know how they're going to deal with that. And that burden of 2018, you know, again, as well as they did in the summer, like you said, I think that burden of 2018 is still weighing very heavily on that U.S. men's national team. They need a win.
Costa Rica at home against Jamaica. Goalless draw against Panama. You lose to Mexico. They're on 1 point. I think there's some massive questions around this team. Jamaica needs points as well, obviously, playing Costa Rica. That's a big match. What about Canada? What about the fact that we all came through and we expected them to go on and potentially, you know, we were like 7 points would be a great window. Playing these home games against a perceived team that's a weaker team of the bunch. Playing at home, El Salvador doesn't have the depth. They've started the same 11 players in both their games thus far, third game in a 3-game window. I think there's some significant pressure on Canada to go out, pick up the full 3 points.
Yeah, not getting the full 3 against Honduras. Then you get that point against the USA and you wonder what could have been on 4 points. But either way, yeah, it's going to be huge against El Salvador. And that's what's next up for Canada. Back home Wednesday night, BMO Field. Join us at 6:30 p.m. ET as we get you set for kickoff. And let's focus on the boys in red when we come back. What is going on with Alphonso Davies? He left the last game with an injury. Who needs to step up if he's out? And who has been standing out for the Canadians?
to title defended. Canadian Premier League supremacy forged in Hamilton, defended on Prince Edward Island.
Welcome back into OneSoccer today. Andy, Gareth, Ollie still with you. Hello to everyone watching the free preview as well on our OneSoccer YouTube channel. That's right, because it's a big game tomorrow, Canada, El Salvador. And when we've talked about Alphonso Davies before and possibly not seeing him in all three games, it's been because of rotation, right? And John Herdman wanting to manage minutes. But now it may be forced upon him. Alphonso Davies in that game against the United States coming out in the 76th minute. He's clearly dealing with an injury, didn't train today. So the big question right out of the gate, Gareth, is how big of news is this to not potentially have Davies in the lineup against El Salvador?
I think it's big. I think it's huge, actually. Look, when he came off, it didn't really look like he was all that hurt or injured. Looked like he kind of run his race. Maybe he was dealing with a cramp or something like that. So the various reports that have circulated and are floating around today, it's obviously not great news for the Canadian men's national team, and we'll see where things end up. The situation is one that's evolving as we're taping the show here today. But what we do know is that he didn't train. Whether he's still with the team or not, I think that the signs are aren't great. I think there might be a little bit of gamesmanship here on behalf of Canada's part. We've already experienced that, like training at an unknown place in Nashville and limited availability. Like they're going all CONCACAF here. So I don't think anyone absolutely knows the complete truth. I don't think that everything's lost for Canada. In the Gold Cup, they beat Costa Rica, did well against Mexico with a depleted team. You add Larin and Jonathan David back into the mix with that group. I still think that you have plenty of players and different individuals who can step up and do the job for this Canadian men's national team. But is it a loss? Absolutely, but not a catastrophic one at this point.
No, I don't think he's going to play. Like, I don't know anything, and obviously we'll see what happens later tonight in terms of the news that comes out, but there's enough smoke out there that you just think that when he's started two matches over the past few days, and if he's feeling anything, I think they're going to have a very hard time putting him out there and explaining that one to Bayern. So I wouldn't expect to see him. I'd love to be wrong. It is a loss. I agree with Wheels. It's a loss, but it's not a terminal blow. You know, I think there's enough about this team, and we've seen it at the Gold Cup, that there's different threats there that can cause a team like El Salvador problems. But there's no doubt that you're going to come up against a team tomorrow that's coming here for a point. They'll be delighted to go away with a draw. And when you have a player like Alphonso Davies who can just make those runs from deep positions, provide that, you know, that extra player that unlocks the defense, he's going to be missed. But there's enough others, I think, and you look at someone like Tajon Buchanan in particular, who can do a similar job, that you would hope Canada will be okay.
Well, let's talk about this, right? Because Alphonso Davies has been really good in the first two games. It really doesn't surprise anybody. But with him potentially now not playing in that third game against El Salvador, when you look at Jonathan David, do you want to see more from him, Ollie?
Yeah, of course, but I think that's a reason for optimism for me, is that you look around this Canadian team and there's so many potential difference makers. And so far it's been Davies and it's been Larin, and Milan Borjan probably deserves to have a mention in there as well. But, you know, then you go through Jonathan Davids, Tajon Buchanan, Junior Hoylett, to be fair, has made an impact, but I think he can do even more. Jonathan Osorio has barely played. Atiba Hutchinson, I think, can be a match winner. You know, has that ability to contribute in attack as well as in defence. So there's players scattered throughout this team who are capable of producing match-winning moments. That, for me, is a reason to feel really good about this Canadian team.
Needs more service. For me, I don't think that he was brought into the game enough against Honduras. Like, full credit to the way that Honduras defended in doing so, limiting options. But every number 9, every striker, he requires the ball at his feet, and he didn't get it anywhere near enough for me. I think that by Davies not playing here, perhaps you can add another player to the midfield. I think that's an area that I would like to see, just in terms of how this team is building forward. I think Jonathan Osorio is a perfect name. He's going to be fresh. He's barely played. You're right. You bring him in. He seems to be the player that's always connected to this team over the course of 2021. He just provides that little bit of quality, that player. He's not a true out-and-out 10, but he's more of an attack-minded midfielder as well. And he's very good on the ball. I think that he could be a real solution, and maybe Canada elects to play in a little bit of a different way. But I'm not worried about Jonathan David. 15 goals in 18 Canada games. That's a phenomenal return, and no doubt he's going to be up for it tomorrow night.
Well, speaking of scoring goals for Canada, I mean, Kyle Larin has both the goals so far in this World Cup qualifying camp, in the final round, I should say, and he's leading the way, obviously, for Canada as well in the overall World Cup qualifying campaign. 3 more, and he breaks the record right now that's being held by Dwayne De Rosario. So Kyle Larin has been great. Milan Borjan, as you mentioned, Ollie has been great. But of these two players, who's made themselves perhaps a little bit more irreplaceable for you? Sorry, Beyonce, but one of these two perhaps is irreplaceable, Gareth. Would that be Eustachio? How about Alistair Johnston?
I think it's Alistair Johnston. And I love everything that Stefan Eustachio brings to the table. But Alistair Johnston allows all the attacking players and go out and do what they do based upon his positional awareness, his overall footballing sense, and his adaptability across the back line. Oftentimes, Canada shifts and almost look like they're playing a 3-4-3 at times, where he comes in from an outside position and just tucks in, and he provides a platform for players like Larea or Buchanan or whoever it may be to go out and maybe take a little bit, take some more risks in the team. I think he might be the most important player for this Canadian men's national team to play it the way they do. Alistair, not Alphonso Davies, not Atiba, not Eustachio. I think it may very well be Alistair Johnston. I think he's pretty close to irreplaceable in the team.
Well, the thing with Johnston is there's no one else who can do his job.
Right.
Right? Like, you look at maybe potentially trying to groom someone in the future. I think that would probably be a good idea, because if he goes down injured, Wheels is right. Like, it is going to affect the whole team and the way they play and the flexibility they have. That being said, Eustachio for me is one of their best players. One of the best players at his position in the region. I think as much as you could say, well, you can play Atiba and Marc-Anthony Kaye, and that's a great midfield too. Like, Eustachio for me is the main man in there now. With all due respect to Atiba Hutchinson and what he's been to this team, and hopefully will continue to be over these qualifiers, Eustachio for me is the heartbeat of this Canadian team in central midfield.
Excellent.
Home run on both of these players as well. I mean, a feather in the cap for Herdman and Eustachio, getting him to switch allegiances to Canada. And Alistair Johnson, I mean, how much last year as well were we just talking about that right back for Canada and getting somebody in that position, and so far looking great there. Ollie, would you consider 5 points at the end of these 3 games? Would that be considered a success for Canada?
Yeah, I think so. I think we would have loved 6, obviously, and probably targeted the 2 home games to get that. I think, you know, when you take a point from the US, which obviously if you beat El Salvador gets you up to 5, so you're nearly at the same number, but then you also add in the fact that you've denied the US 2 points at home. Like, I think that kind of balances out, and it's about as good, right? And certainly when you look at the way qualifying has been so far, as we talked about earlier, it's so even, so many teams taking points off each other. I think you can talk yourself into being pretty happy with 5 points. It's a good start.
I'm fine with it as well. I think it's also about not only the point return, you need to be able to keep yourself in the mix, but what you're trying to build here. And what I do think is we're seeing the personality and the character of this team come out and evolve before our eyes. We've seen this team play in a number of different ways over the course of 2 games. I think you're really giving some other teams something to think about as we go forward into this competition. And the fact that they're so adaptable, home, away, playing different styles, I just think that all bodes well. So the high five, the points, it's all good. But I think big picture, there's more at play here, and it's developing nicely.
I know how John Herdman views this game against El Salvador, but I'll ask you the same question. Is this a must-win?
Well, it's not one of those must-wins, like we need to win this game in order to move on, but I think that they're treating it like that, and I think that we should treat it that way as well. Other than Panama coming into this competition, I'm not sure how you had them ranked. I would have had El Salvador as the 7th team out of 8. So yes, you should go on and win your home games, especially when you do have greater depth than this team traveling in here. Even the Salvadorian head coach said that this is going to be our most difficult game. They played their rival in Honduras, and they played the United States at home. I thought those comments, you put them out there, Ollie, I found them quite sensational to think that, I don't know if it's just lip service, that he actually thinks that Canada may be the most difficult game.
Or at least at home. Canada are at home, right? I don't think there's any true must-wins right now, in the sense that if Canada doesn't win tomorrow, it's all over. Obviously not. They're going to come back in October, but that'll be the thing. If they don't win, they're going to have to come back in future games and try and pick up points elsewhere and make up that ground. And that starts to get very, very difficult when you look at, the challenges of playing away in this region, and how important those home games are. So in terms of what, as I said, there's no real must-wins right now, but as close as you can get to a must-win at this stage, this is it. You have to win these home games.
And they made it a stated goal. The players made it a stated goal to try to win every game at home. Okay, they didn't win their first one, but that's going to be the goal here.
By the way, Herdman did say must-win game for them. We just love that phrase in the world of sport, don't we? Either way, their fans want to see the full 3 points. Hopefully must-win game. Come on, match of the week is this Saturday, 4 p.m. ET, currently sitting 3rd. You got Forge taking on a Yorkside coming off of Bananas 3-3 draw against Halifax that saw 3 goals in the last 5 minutes of the game. And the CPL features brightly in a new game we're going to play next, Either or. And neither of us really understand the concept dreamt up by producer Kyle, but we'll try next. We're turning our attention to the Canadian Premier League now in a new segment called Either Or. These guys are already poo-pooing it. You gotta give it a chance.
Either or.
Listen, if you play by the rules, this is going to work. Andy, Gareth, Ollie. It's a simple concept. It's either or. So I'm gonna give you two options. It's either this or that.
So
and
it
you
should
have
be
to
called
choose it.
this or that.
But it's either or.
You can get with this or you can get with that.
Don't get
Like,
me singing that, please, or we
get with
will
this?
mess up. Okay, here it is. Are you ready for it? Okay. Who will win the Golden Boot award, Gareth? Either Wanderers striker Joao Morelli or the field.
Give me the field.
Okay.
I know that there's some room to make up here. What's Morelli on 9 goals already? But I like the field. I think, look, I know Joe Mason's 4 goals back, but he's played about half the games as Morelli and everyone else. He's on fine form right now. I'm not sure who else might pop up and start banging in the goals, but if you're going to give me the field versus one with 12 games to go, give me the
So
field.
you're going the
So I'm going to go with the
or.
That.
No.
Oh, the either.
Stop it.
Or the or.
I'm going with the or. Is that how this works?
Yes, you're going with the
Okay,
or.
I'm going with the or. The fields, yeah, like Morelli is a heavy favourite at this point. He's having a fantastic season. He takes penalties as well, which will help him. But Joe Mason is the one that you just have in the rearview mirror, and you're thinking 5 goals in the amount of minutes he's played. Can he catch him up? I think it's a possibility. And, you know, Mason combined with enough other guys who are on 5 or thereabouts, I think there's still a race to be had here.
Either Valour FC makes the playoffs or York or Halifax makes the playoffs.
There's an either
so
or
it's either Valour or York Halifax.
I'm going to need like at least 5 or 10 seconds to digest that question. Just going to talk through it. I think I'm going to go with York and do I get York and Halifax together?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to take the 2 of them.
Yeah.
I'm taking the field again, basically. Just look at Valor's record since they got out of the bubble. It's a concern. I know they have a lot of home games coming up now, so maybe they redress that balance a little bit. But I just think one of York or Halifax has got it in them to put a bit of a run together here, especially playing in the East, where they play against each other. They play against Atletico Ottawa, who's in last place right now. Forge might get distracted a little bit by the cup competitions. I think there's going to be another Eastern team in there.
I'm going with the double or. The or. York or Halifax. Valour without the R&R tonight, and I'm not talking rest and relaxation, Ricci and Romeo. Both suspended. Romeo picked up a caution on the weekend. Ricci, accumulation. They're having a real difficult time scoring goals. I just don't think there's enough goals. I've said that all along, but I've been pressured on this program to lock in Valour for a playoff spot. I just haven't been willing to go there and do that. I think York's on much better form right now, and if you're going to give me one team out of those 3, I think York United is the absolute play right now. So give me the or.
Sticking with Halifax.
Of course,
They're not dead yet.
You're sticking with Halifax, that's for sure. Okay, there's absolutely no context to these next few ones that we're going to go through right now. This is where I'm going to allow you guys to be creative here. Like, I'm literally going to say it's either Rob Gale or Jimmy Brennan.
I don't even know what that means. I want both. I like both of them.
No, either or.
I don't even know how to answer that question.
Who would win in the fight?
Who would win in a fight? Ooh, I would go Jimmy Brennan, but Rob Gale would go down swinging. I honestly don't know what this question means.
It says here.
I've known Jimmy for longer than Rob, and like I said, York is on better form right now than Valour. I love Gale's persona. So if it was like, who would I replace Oliver Platt with on this show to sit next to me? It would be this man right here, the legend that is Rob Gale. So I'm not sure if that answers
There you
what
go,
you're
get
looking
creative.
It's a silly question, so I'm just going to sit on the fence and say I like both of them. I think Rob has done a fantastic job in taking a team that had a really tough time in 2019, and we gave him a lot of criticism, and he's made them relevant, and he's learned from the mistakes they made that year, really built that club up, I think, with some limitations that he has to deal with in Winnipeg. He's done a good job. But I also think that Jimmy Brennan is having like a quietly really good year. I know they're in 5th place, and so they maybe don't catch the eye in that way, but that is such a young team. that he has coached into playoff contention. So they're both having fantastic seasons, and I refuse to entertain the question.
They're both very animated on the sideline. If I was going either or, though, I would have to take Rob Gale. And I've been on the sideline for both of their games. Robbie's loud. All right, here's another one with no context, Ollie. Tommy Wheeldon Jr. or PA-MODOU. Either Tommy or Pa.
Again, got a lot of time for both, and I think both could be in contention for this job opening that I'm going to mention. But I'm going to take the Whitecaps angle here, because I don't think we've talked enough about how PA-MODOU should be, you know, one of the top candidates for this job. He's just beaten them in the Canadian Championship, but I think the reasons why he's a fit for that job, you know, go far, far beyond that. I think they need someone to rejuvenate that place, to get the fans back on board. He has the personality to do that. I think they need someone who can develop young players, who can turn around some players that have had a tough time over the past year or two. We've seen him do exactly that at Pacific. He also mentored the best ever Whitecaps player, by the way, Alphonso Davies, credits Carr as one of the biggest influences on him. He knows the club, he's played for them, he's got connections obviously all around this region, in Canada and in MLS in general. Okay, I know the experience isn't there, and maybe after Marc Dos Santos, that's what the Whitecaps are going to be looking for. But for me, he ticks a lot of boxes for that Vancouver Whitecaps job, and I think he should be at least in consideration.
I love how in the either-ors, we're going to have to preface, I love both guys.
Oh, my
Imagine,
goodness.
I hate that guy. You're the worst. I'll go wheels up. Okay. Tommy Wheeldon Jr. And I'm with you with everything that you said about PA-MODOU, but a lot of those things that you said, can't they be attributed to Tommy Wheeldon Jr.?
True.
He cultivated a club in Foothills and brought them to the Canadian Premier League. Now we've seen a team that's being turned over by 3 years, and they're still joint leaders right now. He certainly has connections in the game, bringing over the likes of Joe Mason, Dan Klomp, who's unbelievable right now. He's actually replaced very good players with, I think, players that are actually better. And get this isn't only its side that's topped the table and hasn't had one penalty decision go their way all season. By the way, Tommy Wheeldon Jr. calling out the referee, I'm happy he did that, because there were 2 stonewall penalties not given against Valour on the weekend. And on top of that, we're in the 3rd year of the Canadian Premier League, and Tommy Wheeldon Jr. hasn't lost a game to Rob Gale and Valour, Jimmy Brennan and York, and then the Paulus Koch 2-headed monster with FC Edmonton. 3 teams have failed to beat Cavalry. I think he's perennially underrated. Wheels up, Tommy Wheeldon Jr. That's my either or.
There you see, you for guys who complained about not knowing how to answer.
We
you
like
gave
talking
answers.
about Tommy and Pa.
Yes.
I will say, though, that Pa is actually giving Tommy a run for his money when it comes to the fashion side of things. I didn't think there would be another CPL coach who could do that. Watch out. All right, now you guys are about to tick off some fan bases. You ready for this, Gareth? I'm going to start with you. Either Wanderers Ground or Starlight Stadium.
Ooh, East Coast or West Coast? Do I have an East Coast bias or a West Coast bias? I will go Wanderers Ground, and for one reason, and one reason only, grass field. I'll take a grass field over an artificial pitch any day of the week. And I want to give a shout out to Wanderers supporters, because at least a couple of their games already this season, it's been like an absolute monsoon, an absolute just mess of a weather day, and they've stuck in and they played their part. I think Starlight's special. When they knock down that hydro pole and the camera angle's a little bit higher, it's going to be even better. But what they're cultivating on the West Coast is pretty awesome. But I'll stick with Wanderers Grounds for the time being.
We try and get this question in there every now and then. Like, what's the best atmosphere in the CPL? I haven't been to all of the stadiums. So
I haven't been to either one yet.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pam.
Go with the grass, bro.
I mean, I'll go with the grass. I'll go against the hydro pole because we need to get rid of that thing and improve the camera angle. And also, it was absolute mayhem yesterday on Labor Day at the Wanderers Grounds in terms of the weather, the game that we saw. That was great. So I'll go with Halifax.
Yeah, we need the pandemic to really take a hike so we can properly explore a lot of these as well, right? All right, so here's either or, most entertaining team in the CPL.
We're still going, okay?
Either Pacific or any other team, Ollie.
I'm going to go with any other team because I'm going to go with York United. Because I just find, okay, maybe Pacific on a consistent basis play the most entertaining football, but I think the most entertaining matches often involve York United. They're so unpredictable. Like, I thought at the start of the season that this team would have a pretty good defense, but struggled to score goals, and maybe in a lot of low-scoring games. It's been the complete opposite. Like they have one of the poorer defensive records in the league, despite the fact that Dominic Zator has generally played pretty well, I think. But they have no issues finding the back of the net. You know, so many exciting young players, Ferrari, Johnston. Obviously, Michael Petras has come back and is having a good season as well. They score for fun. You never know which way their games are going to go. They've had 3-3 draws, 2-2 draws. I think they're the best and most entertaining team in the CPL right now.
It's the either, I think. It's Pacific.
The either.
They've scored the most goals in the league. I actually got to teach Oliver Platt about Wang Chung on the weekend. That was a special moment as well, as Caden Chung scored. Everybody have fun tonight.
You didn't know that song?
I mean, I wasn't
And they
born
sing
in the
that song
80s,
at their
so
games,
no.
apparently, which is even better. Highly entertaining, good names, good players, good goals, good times. Pacific FC.
Either or, making its debut here on OneSoccer today. I think it was
This or that.
successful. Who put him above us? Like,
that?
please, we got to look up at Adam Jenkins, who's joining us next for Checks
That's
and
assault,
Balances.
brother.
You're
That's
gonna
assault.
I can find you, buddy.
Forever first to title defended. Canadian Premier League supremacy forged in Hamilton, defended on Prince Edward Island.
It's a united group with a country behind them. Bail the buck down and in. Kyle Laren up and over and in. Junior Harlan. Is it back to second? It's over the line. Alfonso Davies. Cormanu. Oh, Canada. Oh, baby. Bring on the octagon and bring on the rest.
All right, just as I'm starting to get used to the cameras and where I'm supposed to look as we're doing OneSoccer today in studio, I don't know if I can ever get used to Jenkins being above us. So let's put him in a box quickly.
Yeah.
It's Checks and Balances with Adam Jenkins. What's up, Adam?
Hey guys, this is good. I like this. I like the rug. I like the fact that I'm finally up in the attic, and I like that I can throw things whenever I please. So this is a glorified,
podium?
massive success. Yeah, it's the podium.
Like you're
This
making a
is-
presidential address up there.
I'd like to throw my name in the ring for the Prime Minister. Just,
Okay,
I know
preach.
we're late in the election, but I
Can't
think
be
we
any
could probably
worse.
get it done.
Might as well.
Wow, I wouldn't put it past it.
See, I didn't say which party. I wanted to
speak to
avoid
us.
getting into the political debate wheels.
Great
and then we
hair,
just went
though.
Ahead and did it. So I have to start actually with the checks and balances from the post-game show that the two of you did with KJ and then Charlie coming on late at the end. Because just because it's not OneSoccer today doesn't mean I'm not always listening. And Wheels, you said on that show, I have no idea what I said. What I say during commentary, because you were trying to defend yourself from a mistake, and then 5 minutes later, as Ollie sort of gave you the eyebrow raise, you were waxing poetic about the intro you had from the day, or like 3 days before. So do you or do you not know what you say during your commentary?
Next question.
Correct. That was the answer you were given when you said, and I quote, I said that the United States were overrated, to which, thankfully, we had some sort of checks and balances.
I was wrong. I admitted I was wrong, Adam.
Yeah.
I admitted I was wrong.
I just wanted to make sure that everyone else who wasn't watching the show knew you were wrong.
I apologize.
You literally sang, I come from a land down under. This was underrated.
It's a fantastic counterpoint.
For everything now.
Yes, well, Andy, you're the one comparing Alistair Johnson to Beyonce today. So there's some weird analogies on this show.
He's not irreplaceable.
Now, that was up there.
Or replaceable.
Wheels, you cannot challenge someone to spell a difficult word and not expect me to challenge you to spell the word. So please, how do you spell preposterous?
I don't know how to spell it. That's why I asked him how to spell it.
Okay.
It's a question.
B-R-E-P-O-S-T-E-R.
Period. Question mark.
O-U-S, I believe. Yeah, I did it right. Let's move on to qualifying, explaining must win. You cannot say must win in air quotes when everyone knows that it's just a term that we use in the media to drop drama when it's not necessary. We understand that it's not a win or you're in the bin kind of situation, Wheels, but we've said must win for quite some time now.
Can it be an either or? A must win?
Okay, and that brings me to that. Thank you for the segue for that as well, Wheels. You are both, you and Ollie are both university educated people. You understand what conjunctions are. I do not understand the flack you were throwing that segment.
You already stumped them at conjunction.
I don't know what that means.
Dumb it down a notch there, son.
I'm appreciating the tactic from the two of you to just not respond to anything anymore. At least we moved on from the whatever, so I'll just take that as a win as well. This one's for KJ, going back to the pregame show or the postgame show. He's been around enough to understand the fact that I'm always watching, I'm always listening. He's been hanging out with Wheels too much. He's forgetting that I'm on this show every single day and that I was on the touchline for the Canada and Honduras game. I'll be back there again.
Forgettable.
KJ,
Would you like to respond,
so just
KJ?
know, KJ, I am always here and I am always watching, just like I'm always watching the three of you. I like the attic. I think we should bring it back, Andy.
Yeah, maybe that's what we're going to call it, the boy in the attic. That's a little creepy.